Welcome back. Hour number 2 of Talkline on the Metronews Radio Network in and around the great state of West Virginia. Hoppy Kirchhoff with you. Kay Murray, our producer. Anthony Sparks handling the video stream. You can watch us at wvmetronews.com. There are 7, count them, 7 Republicans running for the GOP nomination to Congress in the 2nd Congressional District. We have 3 congressional districts, 1st, 2nd, 3rd. First is the northern part of the state, Northern Panhandle. The 2nd district is this sprawling district. It goes all the way from the Eastern Panhandle, all the way over from Summit Point in the Eastern Panhandle in Jefferson County, all the way over to the Ohio River in the west. It dips down into Kanawha County. It's a giant district, a district now represented by a Congresswoman, Shelley Moore Capito, who's abandoning that because she's running for the U.S. Senate. Last week, we talked to Alex Mooney. Was it last week? Earlier in this week? I forget. Alex Mooney. We're going to talk to all 7 this morning. We're joined by Ron Walters Jr. from Charleston area, and he's a Republican candidate for Congress in the 2nd District. Joins us on Metronews Talkline. Ron, good morning. How are you?
Morning. Doing well. And you, Hoppy?
I'm well, thank you. Who are you, and why are you running?
My name's Ron Walters Jr. You know, I'm originally from Charleston, West Virginia, product of Fort Union Military Academy, West Virginia University, and the University of London. Got my master's degree there in international management. I work as a financial consultant in the insurance industry here in Charleston, West Virginia, with a small family firm. You know, I'm running for Congress, Hoppy, because I'm a young man. I look at what's going on in Washington, D.C., and it scares me to death. You know, $17 trillion in debt, what we see with the EPA and other government, agencies coming after our industries here in the state. And, you know, obviously with what's happening in the healthcare industry, I'm hoping to go to D.C. and set some things straight.
All right, let's talk about some of these things in particular. On your website, the first thing you talk about is jobs. Philosophically, what, in your opinion, is the role of government in the economy?
I mean, first, I think it's almost a mentality of do no harm. You know, the federal government shouldn't act as a barrier to job growth, and I think it has in the last few years, especially under this administration. You know, there's a limited amount that the federal government can do to spur economic growth. I think there are measures, clearly with the Obamacare or the ACA, if you will, you know, pushing that out, pushing the work week to 29 and a half hours is asinine. You know, it keeps people from getting good jobs. You know, again, we have to get government out of the way. But I think philosophically, I would say that the government needs not be a barrier, needs to do everything it can to provide a fertile ground for jobs to grow and allow the economy to grow accordingly.
Do you believe that the Congress should vote to raise the minimum wage?
You know, I think it's more of a state's question. I wouldn't touch the federal minimum wage level right now, but I believe that the states should be allowed to control their own economic futures. You know, West Virginians understand West Virginia problems more acutely than anyone. I think we need to let them govern themselves.
Personally, do you believe that the minimum wage should or should not be raised?
Personally, I think that right now where it stands is a good place. You know, as part of my family owning a small business, you know, we pay individuals in another side of our business. We pay individuals a little bit above minimum wage. We think that you know, maintaining a living wage for individuals is important, but I'd leave the minimum wage where it is and allow the economy to kind of grow accordingly.
Ron Walters Jr. is with us, Republican candidate for Congress in the 2nd District of West Virginia. You've already mentioned the health care law. Mm-hmm. So what's your solution to our health care problems? I
mean, clearly, you know, the ACA has been, or healthcare reform in this country has been a topic for a long time. The ACA is not the right bill. You know, I think we need to look at more private sector solutions, including healthcare savings accounts, ones that are tax advantaged and, you know, employer sponsored or maybe, you know, contributions from employers coupled with high deductible plans. I think we need to close the donut hole in Medicare Part D. You know, I think having a student stay on till they're 26 on their parents' insurance is fine. And we really need to tackle this issue of pre-existing conditions. But we need to do it more so in a private sector solution. And I think there are solutions out there if we start the conversation. A lot of these are bipartisan efforts. As you've alluded to before, you know, this bill was passed with little to no bipartisan support. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security all had bipartisan support as they were moving through the Congress. The ACA was rushed through. It was a partisan bill, and it's caused all these problems. If we had stopped to talk, I think we would have been in a much better place than we are now.
Let's talk about the pre-existing conditions issue, because I hear a lot from Republicans that they don't like ACA and it's too big and it's too sprawling and it's bad. But we got to do something about this pre-existing conditions. And typically what I hear is someone that says, look, I have cancer, and then I lost my job because I couldn't work any longer, and now I don't have insurance, and if I go to get insurance, it's prohibitive. I can't afford it. Do you think that it's the government's responsibility via the taxpayers to provide some help, and if so, how much and in what way, for people who through no fault of their own have astronomical healthcare costs?
Well, a couple things on the healthcare costs. One, we need to do more to control medical cost inflation, and we can do that with transparency and different measures across the board. I think the government's role should be to incentivize an individual to get health insurance. I think it's an economic benefit and a social benefit. And obviously, when you have these situations where an individual cannot have or obtain coverage, whether it be costly or at all, because of a pre-existing condition, perhaps we look at state-run risk pools in conjunction with the private sector working together to find a solution. So there are options out there. It's an issue that we have to deal with. We cannot continue to allow it to just go.
Ron, you talk about that you say we need to incentivize people to get insurance. Isn't that what Obamacare does? I mean, Obamacare says to people that it incentivizes them by saying if you don't get insurance, you're going to get fined. So, and you're in the insurance business, and the nature of insurance is you have to have a large risk pool. So,
absolutely.
So.
Well, here's the situation. I think when you talk about incentive and punishment, I think they're two different things. A fine is clearly a punishment. To incentivize someone is more of a carrot solution. It's to give this individual perhaps a tax credit or a tax break for purchasing insurance. There are ways we can do it. The government needs to step in to help the economy, the healthcare cost inflations. Whatever we can do to help retain those or slow that and mitigate that healthcare cost from rising, I think that'll have the effect of lowering premiums in the long run.
Ron Walters Jr. is with us. He's a Republican candidate for Congress in the 2nd Congressional District, one of 7 candidates that you'll see on the ballot if you're in the 2nd Congressional District when you go out on May 13th. Let's talk about the Second Amendment. What do you think the Second Amendment says?
Well, I mean, it's very clear on what it says. I mean, you have a right to bear arms and it shall not be infringed. I think that what we saw in the state level here was, personally, I think it was a good move. I support one state, one law, and I'll do everything I can on the federal level to defend the Second Amendment.
If there are any limitations on the Second Amendment?
Well, I think we need to interpret it as broadly as it's stated. I'd be hesitant to put limitations on it. I mean, it's pretty clear when it says it shall not be infringed. Again, I think the gun debate comes down to, and unfortunately, we had a shooting, I think this morning or maybe late yesterday on the west side of Charleston in my brother's Senate district. So he keeps up on this and keeps me apprised of what's going on. We see situations where criminals, if they want guns, they're going to get guns. And that's what we need to stay targeted on is keeping guns out of the hands of individuals who wish to do us harm. I think a lot of the debate centered on guns also should focus on mental health in the United States and where we are with that. I don't think enough time is taken to say these individuals, if they wish to do us harm, are going to do us harm, whether it's a stabbing, as we saw in Pittsburgh, or, a shooting in different areas. We have to do more to fight against the causes, the root cause of these situations. Ron
Walters Jr. is with us, Republican candidate for Congress in the 2nd Congressional District. Let me get back to budgetary issues and healthcare issues. Paul Ryan has put out his budget before the House of Representatives a couple weeks ago, and it passed. It was pretty much a partisan vote. I think there were 12 Republicans who did not vote for it, but it narrowly passed. And I'm not holding you accountable for every detail of the Ryan budget because you're not in Congress. But sure. It's fair to ask, as I did Mooney, and I will all candidates, if you were in the Congress, would you have voted for or against the Ryan budget, and why or why not?
Well, let me say this. I mean, Congressman McKinley has been a pretty vocal opponent. At least I don't know if he voted for it this last time, so I apologize.
I don't think he did.
His history has been to vote against the Ryan budget. And his concerns are valid, I think. One, clearly it doesn't do a lot to address infrastructure needs. I think in the aging infrastructure that we have here in the United States, we definitely need to look at what's happening. I mean, I don't need to say much more about what's happened with the Sissonville explosion or what we saw in New York with the gas explosions. But additionally, veterans benefits. I'm big on protecting our veterans serving, our country. They deserve to have their benefits. I think there's a lot of questions around what it's going to do to Medicare and Social Security. But and as an individual who would represent an aging population, we need to get out there in front of this. And I'd love to have the opportunity to talk to Representative Ryan about this bill, about this budget, and try and delve into the particulars and add my 2 cents. That being said, I support the reducing the debt. It reduces it by about $4.5 trillion, I believe, over 10 years and gets to a balanced budget. These are goals that we have to get to. It's the federal debt level is way too high. It's more than we put out annually as a GDP. So we have to get in there and start to correct this, especially for future generations who are going to, take the brunt of this bill.
But as you know, you can't get there from here without doing some of the things that Ryan's talking about, and whether that's making Medicare essentially a voucher program or a premium support program, or making Medicaid and food stamps state block grant programs, or cutting back in a variety of areas, or as others have proposed, raising taxes. So it's one thing to say, and no offense, it's one thing to say I'm going to be a fiscal hawk, but then, okay, what are you going to be hawkish about? So where would you save money? What are your ideas about getting spending under control?
Look, we need a reform across the board. I think, it needs to start from within the federal government. I think a lot of what we've done over the years, borrowing from Social Security, we need to put an end to that. We need to put an end to wasteful government spending across the board. I mean, it's a start, and that's the important thing. I'm a big proponent of the shared pain kind of mentality. Look, if Congress is going to, pass these, bills and budgets that save money, maybe we need to take a cut in pay if I'm in Congress, and I'd be all for that. We need to look at that. But again, it starts with, looking internally and trying to cut waste and fraud and abuse across the systems, and looking at them hard to reform. Okay,
everybody's for getting rid of waste, fraud, and abuse, but you and I know, anybody that looks at the numbers know, that ain't where the real money is. I mean, the real money is in Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and defense. That's where now, I'm not saying that if you don't look at each federal program and figure out where it can cut, you can save some money, but the big money, that's where those things are. And I think, but anyway, go ahead.
I'll say this. I mean, look, the defense spending, for instance, we need to make sure that our troops have the best equipment, the best training, and adequate compensation for what they do. They put their lives on the line every single day. And we need to defend our country. So I'm going to go in with that mentality. But we need to look at every program. I'm realistic about Social Security. I'm 29 years old. I don't believe that I'll have the same Social Security that my parents have.
Should the retirement age be raised?
I think so, yes. Not for anyone over 50, I would believe, right now. But, my generation, if I retire at 68 years old, I think that's all right. Or 70 years old. We're living longer. I think it's a responsible thing to do.
We're talking with Ron Walters Jr., who's a Republican candidate for Congress in the 2nd Congressional District. He's out there on the campaign trail in what is a gigantic district, as I'm sure you're finding out.
Yes.
Trying to get from Jefferson County.
Well, it's nice to get back to Jefferson County. I have a lot of family in that area. I don't know if you remember this, Hoppy, but my father and you actually went to high school together.
I do.
Yeah,
sure.
He was a couple years ahead of you, but...
Your father is Ron Walters, who's a member of the House of Delegates from Kanawha County.
Correct. And I still have a lot of aunts, uncles, cousins, and my grandmother even lives in Charlestown still. So it's nice to get up to the Eastern Panhandle. It's a good excuse to get some home cooking.
Yeah. Let's see. In the fundraising part, I want to spend more time on issues than fundraising, but you are trailing a couple other people in fundraising. How much of a challenge is that, since you were pretty far behind on the financial front?
Sure, it presents challenges of getting the message out. I've been trying to stay in front of people in the district. I think it's important to realize that you want a representative who's present and not just sending a commercial out on TV or sending a mailer. I'm hoping if I'm elected to be in the district as much as possible, to hold town halls, to talk to people. And that's what I've done on the campaign trail. Money aside, I think that the people of West Virginia are owed a representative who's going to be there.
Finally, a lot of Republicans in Congress have signed a no new taxes pledge, the Grover Norquist pledge. Would you be inclined to sign that or not sign that?
I would. I think
you would.
Yes, I would. I believe that we don't have we don't have a revenue problem. We have a spending problem. I think that we desperately need to reform our tax code to make it simpler, fairer, and more competitive on an international level to attract businesses like we see here with Toyota and NGK spark plugs. If we're looking to grow the American economy, grow West Virginia, we need to attract foreign investment. And we can't do that by raising the tax rates as they stand.
Ron Walters Jr., GOP candidate for Congress in the 2nd District. Ron, good to speak with you. Good luck out on the campaign trail.
Thanks, Hoppy. I really appreciate it.
All right, take care. We'll take a break and be back. Stay with us.
My name is Dan.